What's up? Oh, hold on. What's up, Airsofters? Welcome back to the Not So Round Table, episode 114, the Takeover, taking over the Not So Round Table once again.
Yes.
Everybody's
at milsim West.
We're doing, yeah, that's true. Everybody's at milsim West having fun.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or not taking. Oh, well, no, they're probably having a lot of fun right now.
Yeah. Or miserable. Oh, it's not raining, so
it's not. It's hot. It's really hot right now.
We thought it was time to do a speed round, so Ryan and I are going to do as many questions as we can in this episode to try to eliminate some of the overflow in the helm of reasoning.
Someone did.
And we're going to skip the discussion period.
Because we couldn't agree what to talk about.
Pretty much.
We were going back and forth about, like, should we talk about high kappas again?
Yeah,
or should we talk about...
Speed soft? But at that point, I mean, we'd be sounding like broken records.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I do have a Bren. We could talk about. I'm gonna be upgrading my Bren shortly, and we were discussing a parts list last night.
There's not a whole lot to really change in that particular one, though.
I mean, realistically, we don't need to change most of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good gun out of the box, but we just like
trying to make it just a little bit snappier.
And for the sake of fun, like why not?
Yeah.
All
right, let's get right into it. Ryan, you want to start off?
Sure. Gameplay Keepers asks, what's the most badass gun you've never used/owned? That's sort of a weird question because it's like implying that like I know how badass it is despite having never used it.
Maybe based on like other people you've seen using one, or
it's just I assume they're talking about just airsoft guns.
Yeah.
Use/own. I mean, I've never owned an Inokatsu gas blowback M4, but I got to use one or I got to shoot one in the shooting range that we have down here when a customer brought one in. That was so cool.
Was it?
Yeah, because you could only cycle it on CO2. This was before black gas and everything came out and stuff, so you had to use GHK CO2 mags, and like it snapped as hard as like the 9mm carbines that are out right now.
Really?
Like it's really snappy. Like you could actually feel the muzzle start to rise a little bit as you were like shooting it. Yeah.
That's impressive.
It was pretty obnoxious, but it was also like I think those were like going for like $1,500 or something like that. $1,500,
oh, what? Yeah, okay.
It was nice. It was really cool. I just like could never see myself owning one. He also the same guy also owned a full steel Inokatsu 1911, and then that one would only cycle on CO2 magazines, and even then you could only get out about 7 shots off before all the CO2 just vented. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, but it was like super impractical. Never owned either of them, but I've used both of them. I got to think of something that I've never used, but I really want to use.
Well, check this out. I've never owned or used in game a Sistema PTW or
same.
Either of like the newer PTW platforms.
Yeah.
I know Dave's owned like a bunch.
I know. But I want to try. Actually, like I wasn't. It was weird because I wasn't super excited about the Salient PTW before we took it to SHOT Show and then like showed it off to everybody, and everyone was like, "Screw all these other guns! Like I just want to look at this thing." I'm like, "Really, this one?" And then like the more I handled it and looked at it, I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool, I guess." So I guess I'd want to try using that in a game. I just don't think I could ever justify dropping like $2,500 on on a PTW. But I mean, you get what you're paying for. Like everything is custom in that. So like it's the more I talk to people about it, I was like, well, it's not that bad of a deal because you're paying for what's essentially a full custom body and internals, and that alone is going to cost you $2,500, not including the base $1,000 that it costs to get a Sistema anyway. Yeah, so
I think the only other one that I would maybe touch on is one of my old teammates, Oliver. He had a P90 that was with the box mag attachment.
Yeah,
that was putting down like 65 or 70 a second.
I mean, I've shot high-speed guns.
Yeah, so I've never used it in a game. I thought that would be pretty cool. Laser beams.
I don't know if I've ever used my, that high-speed gun that I like 55 a second. I don't know that I ever actually used that in a game. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever actually played with it. I think I built it and
just
right around
proof of concept.
I built it and then everyone was like, "Oh, we can't have high-speed guns anymore, so you got to downgrade it." Yeah.
True that.
That was lame.
And I've never owned a Western Arms Para Ordnance double stack pistol.
That'd be cool.
Always wanted to, but parts are terrible and they have like 20 gas systems. So, All right. Next up, we've got JKill959. What is the most common failure on an AEG? So far, it has been the cutoff levers for me.
Cutoff, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, cutoff. Yeah, the cutoff levers are a pretty common failure point.
Okay.
Assuming that everything else is working on the gun, we'll just disclude fuses.
Okay.
Because fuses are meant to break. Like they're there to break.
Yep.
So the fuse is doing its own job there.
Okay.
I'd say that the most common thing to fail... Pistons have gotten pretty good, actually. Like, generally, you don't see that many pistons fail.
Okay.
Air seals will I notice will generally tend to go.
Okay.
gears, as long as everything is shimmed correctly, they tend to stay together pretty well. Yeah, cutoff levers are a pretty high wear point because it's just brushing on itself over and over and over again.
I've seen guns with a poor AOE or poor engagement between the sector and the piston snap tappets.
Oh,
I've seen tappets fail pretty often.
Tappets have gotten pretty strong now, though. Now that nylon fibers are a big thing and no one's really using ABS plastics anymore for those particular components, or polycarb for those particular components, or as much. Like, everyone's sort of moved on to the nylon fibers and stuff. They're pretty flexible. So
and how often are you seeing mushed pinions now?
Pretty well. Depends on who built it, but pretty rarely. Like, generally, as long as everything is shimmed correctly from factory, and factories are getting a lot better at like actually assembling the guns and stuff, and learning how to put everything together correctly, and as long as the screws aren't backing out or anything like that, they will generally tend to run a long time. Same goes with the motors. Like, the motors, they're not particularly high performance, but they'll last you a pretty good time. Like, most of components in AEGs now are built pretty strongly, especially for what you're paying. Yeah.
So I guess consensus on what we're seeing most often still is cutoff levers.
I'd actually say air seal components, like any rubber components like that are generally high friction, and soft rubber seals and stuff generally tend to go. So your air nozzles, your cylinder head seals, your O-ring on the actual piston head itself, buckings tend to wear out. But yeah, everything else is pretty solid.
Fair enough.
Grab another one.
Hope we answered your question, JKill959.
JKill? It's like J Crew, but JKill.
Yeah.
J Murder.
Or J Killenhull. It's terrible.
Dominex Lacuna asks, Dear Insert, I'm a former speed softer looking to start doing milsim. What are your top 5 personal tips for performing my role as a rifleman? Keep up the good works. And your name is Spencer, apparently.
All right.
Why would you stop speed soft, though? It's great. It's so much fun.
It's okay.
In all seriousness, like, milsim, I guess for me, transitioning over would just be to be okay with waiting.
That's what I was going to touch on, yeah.
Just be okay with, like, not doing nearly as much, nearly as often.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely listening to, like, a command structure. Because generally when playing Speedsoft, it's, like, either your own squad doing, whatever you want to do.
Or lone wolfing.
Or lone wolfing it and just, like, going balls out and, just running down the side of the field. But, yeah, just learning to, I guess, perform with a command structure in a group. Yeah, everything else is pretty. Yeah, just be okay with not doing nearly as much.
Yeah, in a very similar way for me, the biggest thing I had to learn was, when you're doing Speedsoft, you're generally the first in the door, or when you get to a room, you move through it if there's nobody in it. And the name of the game for most milsim games is a war of attrition and holding objectives. And so, just like Ryan said, learning to slow down and wait, and that might mean sitting in a building for an hour.
Yeah. How long were we in that building at Copperhead?
Dude.
We were there for like 3 or 4 hours, right? Yeah. But it was still fun, though. Especially when we moved up to that second building. We were only 2 buildings entire Copperhead.
We spent that whole day really just holding one building and just kind of throwing
and
out.
We fought to another building, and then we got taken over. We're like, oh, screw this. And we like threw grenades as we left.
but it was fun trying to figure out how 2 guys could overwhelm a building, or hopefully overwhelm a building, and then being able to retreat without losing position. So
one of my favorite parts was realizing, well, we don't got this anymore. We need to leave.
Dude, my favorite part was when we ran up to that window, and you were literally, I was just rounds in, and you rolled through that window,
take my gun,
hit the floor, and thank God you stayed down, because I swept right over your back as you rolled in.
Nice.
It was great.
Of course, we don't have that on camera, so for all intents and purposes,
we recorded the whole day sitting in the building and not that advanced.
Yeah.
All right. Molly the Lag asks, Dear Insert, between Matt George, Ryan Shades, and Miguel, if you had to fire one of these people from
Chris isn't even laughing behind the camera.
If you had to fire one of these people.
And Miguel? Yeah. Get Miguel out here.
He's a really hard worker.
He is. But he also annoys me. Stack.
Yeah.
Stack.
I'd hear that.
Imagine hearing that for the entire day.
Stack.
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 Stack. Stack.
I don't know. Molly, I can't answer that question.
They're all, I mean...
Because I feel like every one of these members is integral to...
I'm probably the most expendable one out of all those, because I'm only here like twice a week, so...
Let's go with that. Can we safely choose that instead?
I'd probably fire myself.
We'll get rid of Ryan.
Yeah.
and still take him to events.
Yeah.
He'd be fired, but come as a guest.
Yeah. So I just play for free.
Yeah.
Oh my god, what the heck is what? You guys gotta chill with the names. Like, that's too long of a name, man.
Best Freeman ever, a.k.a. Rogue Freeman.
Rogue Free.
All right, Rogue Freeman.
Hi, Answer. My AK is super front heavy. How do I deal with front heavy airsoft guns? You can't really get away with it with AKs, just because that barrel mass is all pretty forward.
Absolutely.
If you're committed to the AK platform, just you gotta. I guess my only suggestion would be to not put rails on your front of it. Do stuff like the Magpul Zukov furniture. We have one of the AKs over there that has just a plastic handguard that you can attach stuff to. But yeah, keep rails off the front of it. Keep, suppressors off the front of it. Keep, try and keep as much weight off the front of your gun, and don't keep any like extra muzzle devices or stuff like that you don't need, aside from like just the flash hider or whatever to protect your barrel. But how do you deal with front heavy airsoft guns? I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I just use M4s that I've then configured to be either centrally or more rear heavy. Probably a good sling, like a 2-point sling, to really sort of brace the front of it as you're, using it.
Well, there's a couple things you can do too. If you do have rails on the front end, putting your vertical grip further out gives you much better leverage on the front end instead of your vertical grip being the pivot point.
It will start to wear down in your front arm.
Oh,
if
absolutely.
You're constantly guns up. It'll really start to wear on your.
Yeah. And when
arms.
You can, use a support structure. So push
into
a wall or a doorway if you can.
As a brace.
Use braces where you can instead of supporting all the weight yourself. One of the advantages that M4s as a platform have over some of the other gun platforms is the outer barrel is really a free floating outer barrel, and you can go with lighter materials. There are companies that make CNC'd aluminum outer barrels instead of the full steel, and that's the biggest weight issue with the AK is it's for the most part a steel front end.
Yeah, and the trunnion that you have in the front that's like just a big block of steel.
And if all else fails with lightening the front end, you can always add some weight to the back end to give it some ballast. Ultimately, you're getting a heavier platform overall, but it will feel less so when you can redistribute some of that weight rearward.
Try and make it practical, like maybe a mag pouch that's holding a mag as opposed to just weight for the sake of weight.
Yeah, or dude, extend your wires and get a battery pouch back there.
That's
potentially.
True. Yeah, potentially. It's a squeaky chair.
It is a squeaky chair. I wasn't going to mention it. TNP Sheepdog.
Ooh.
Dear Insert, why doesn't MSW use real training versions of the CAT or SOFTT tourniquets instead of the semi-unrealistic tactical tailor ones they've been using?
It's probably cost. Because I know that, I imagine that training cats are probably pretty expensive. And it's also another thing, too, is it's also balancing the fun of an actual game with realism. If we really wanted to be super realistic, I guess we could, but at what point does it become too realistic and not fun anymore for people?
Right. Well, and you've touched on something really important there. It's because also look at the alternative of what they're using to what they could have been using. They could have been doing two-hand touch for 30 seconds, or they could have been doing, not that this is a bad thing, but they could have also been doing the ace bandage wrap, which really isn't all that realistic either.
Yeah.
The reality is that you need a way of healing or regenerating people in game without it taking too much time and taking you out of the game, and without it being too unrealistic. So really that tourniquet that they do use is I think a happy medium,
because they give away those for everyone entering the game. So it's and for them on a cost standpoint, the tactical tailored tourniquets are just one strip of fabric plus a little red piece of fabric and then Velcro basically. So for them as an event organizer, it's way more inexpensive to do that than either buying fake cat tourniquets for everybody to use or having all of their players go out and have to buy replica cat tourniquets.
And it still does give you some sense of realism, because it somewhat looks the part.
It's still a game. So
is it though?
I mean, it's okay. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Lucas Rocha asks, Dear Insert, what do you guys have to say about different bushings available for AEG gearboxes, IEG, metal bushings, ball bearings, bushings, and ceramic bushings?
Dude, I'm really glad we're getting a lot of technical questions. This is good.
This is good. I'm here. I can answer these questions without, mouthing it behind the camera to Matt. Hey.
You jerk.
Hey.
All right. So tons of options. We've seen quite a shift since technology's gotten better.
Yeah.
Bushing materials have gotten better.
Yeah.
Bearing materials have gotten a lot better. Let's start off first by let's talk about what would be the advantage of using a bearing versus a bushing, and when would you suggest choosing one over the other?
So generally speaking, bearings are better alternatives to bushings because they provide a lower coefficient of friction because they're all on ball bearings and stuff. So
Right.
you have smoother guns. People used to claim that you got boost in rate of fire. I generally don't see that. Motor technology has gotten far enough that it's those small coefficients in friction. You're not really going to notice a huge boost
Right.
in rate of fire just because everything's rolling a little bit smoother. But it does affect it to some extent.
Well, less friction also gives you less heat and
Yeah,
wear from heat.
Yeah. So the bearings are good for that. They make your system smoother overall. But bushings are good too, and bushings are more reliable in that sense because bearings you have a bunch of little, which are realistically super tiny. Like we think of it now as like 8 millimeters, like a standard size with the small little bearings on the inside. But that's like as far as like bearings go, if you're talking about bearings,
Still pretty small.
They're tiny.
Yeah.
They're so tiny. Like if you've ever broken apart a bearing, a Airsoft gearbox bearing race, and like looked at the actual individual balls, they're so tiny. Like it's incredible that this for their size that they can withstand as much pressure as they do.
Right.
But
So bushings are more reliable.
they are more reliable. So if you're looking for reliability, I'd say that your advantages of going with bearings over bushings, bushings are a better solution because they just you can't. The only way that you'd break a bushing is if they came loose somehow and they like rotated within inside the gearbox hole and like reamed out your gearbox.
Or due to heat, you could potentially get warping.
Yeah, but the quality of the metals have gotten a lot better. They're starting to use nicer steels. Some of them are using a denser like CNC steel material as opposed to just the sintered materials. I would recommend against using any of those cross-slotted or oil retaining bushings or stuff like that. Some of them will actually have like little grooves cut into the holes of the bearings or in the holes of the bushings that as your gear rotates on the inside, it'll actually start to cut little notches into your gear shafts. And same thing with the cross-slotted bushings themselves. They're not as smooth, and just go with a flat-faced bushing. That's the best one to go with. And I would also recommend if you are going to be doing what I do, which is using a mixture of bearings and bushings, putting one solid bushing on the bottom of your spur gear. That's the gear that has the most stress on it as far as the forces of the piston and the sector gear driving backwards, and then the forces of the motor trying to turn the bevel and spur gear backwards. They generally tend to do this and crush the bearing on the bottom. And this I've done that with steel bearings. I've done that with ceramic bearings, and yeah, those are the only two.
So you recommend putting a bushing there?
Yeah. And as far as ceramic bearings versus steel bearings, for a while I thought ceramic bearings were nice because they were the smoothest and they were the strongest, and then I crushed a couple of them to my surprise, and I was like, maybe either the quality of the ceramic bearings that I'm using is going down, or I don't know, but it was something where for the most part I'll use a mixture, but I won't put one on the bottom of the spur anymore. I hope that answers your question to some sort of like acceptable degree.
I had a question.
Yeah, what's up?
What do you feel about nylon bushings?
Nylon bushings? I mean, just use that in everything. Yeah, those are totally good. There's no way that they'd melt or like deform or warp. I mean, it's the future. Plastics.
Because I was also thinking, it looks a lot like nylon.
Uh-huh.
Since you're recommending nylon, string cheese looks a lot like nylon, and if you cut it,
and then you get that nice cheesy smell that like wafts out of your gun.
As it heats up, you get a nice mozzarella
What
flavor.
other smells do I want coming out of my gun? A pepperoni smell? Like
No.
What else? Like
That smell of burnt electronics though?
Yeah, like when I fry a MOSFET.
Oh, dude! I plugged my cell phone charger in the Humvee or the Hummer H1's 12-volt port.
Yeah.
But our power ports in that are wired to 24 volt for whatever reason. Fried my charger.
Nice.
And I was just like, oh, that doesn't look good. And then Miguel's like, dude, pull it out, it's smoking.
You just left it in there as it's catching fire, and you're just like, something isn't right here.
Yes. And then he was like, is it ruined? I smelled it and I said, oh yes, it's very much ruined.
It's got that smell that lets you know you need to buy another one.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Una mas?
Yeah.
Una dos?
We'll do one more and then we'll go to We'll take a break for a minute.
Come
The
on.
Mini Ninja 8888.
That's a lot of 8s.
Hey, Evike, greetings from England.
Oh, hello. What's up?
My question is, what would be your top tips for running a ghillie suit?
Ooh,
I've just made my own from scratch, but still new to using it. Thanks.
That's a good question because I've never used a ghillie suit like ever before. Sniping's not a thing that I do in general.
I'm actually going to point you to another channel. If you have a minute, the Swamp Sniper, otherwise known as Chris from Ballahack Airsoft, in Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia.
I think.
Put
out a fantastic video about camouflage that I watched, and really is a fantastic guide. It's about all sorts of camouflaging, everything down from face paint to how to use camouflage, and they go over briefly ghillie suits and about breaking up the human figure. The ghillie is just a more advanced version of camouflage, and what you're attempting to do is break up the human silhouette. You know, when the human eye looks into brush, you know, a human silhouette stands out readily. It's very, very easy to detect. So when you're using your ghillie, you want to be using it in a way that really helps you break up the form of your body. And, you know, a lot of brush can be tucked into it to really break up your form. And one of the other things to consider is generally when you're sniping, you're not standing up. So a ghillie suit that covers the front half of your body isn't terribly important in the sense that you know, they're not really going to see the entirety of your body. So something that, you know, may only be chest up and covering the top of your head, shoulders, and maybe a portion of your back is going to be far more effective than a full ghillie suit. So I understand. I could definitely be wrong.
Have you ever used a ghillie suit?
I have not, because I know they're so incredibly hot.
Yeah.
And I don't
live in a
sit
desert.
there. Right. Plus, I've never been one to be a sniper and just sit there for hours on end. I just don't have the patience for it.
That would be cool though, like to go to a milsim event and do the whole like sniper plus spotter.
It would be cool.
Or designated marksman at least, or I guess it wouldn't really be a designated marksman because it would be like a 2-man team.
Right.
Like
Plus,
scout
this is Airsoft.
I mean, I don't know.
I think
it'd just be cool to just like run in a pair of 2 and then like just do stealthy.
I mean, let's build a Wolverine VSR-10.
Okay. Or we got the new Amoeba sniper rifles in too. Those are spring powered, and we could just drop in an AEG spring.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that partially answered your question. If there are anybody in the comments section that knows far more about camouflage than we do,
There probably is.
please comment. I'd really like to learn something more about ghillies and about camouflage and breaking up the human figure. With that said, we're going to go to a short break. No commercial this week because we don't have a sponsor, but
That's okay.
We hope you enjoy this little clip. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that. If you want to watch the full clip of that video, we'll put a link in the description below. Continuing on with the questions, who asked the last one?
I
think that was me.
It was probably me. It was you. Okay, let's do this.
It was a ghillie question.
Oh, that's right. It's been so long since happened.
It's been a full minute.
Lewis Rivers asks, "Hey, insert and guest ? In your personal opinions, what are the best / your preferred motors or motor brands that you have dropped into an AEG, assuming that you have one? High torque, high speed. Does it even particularly matter to you out in the field? Love the show. Keep it going." Well, thank you, sir.
Another technical question.
Yeah. Well, you can attest to some of the motors that you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sistema.
Yeah, really expensive discontinued motors.
Sistema Magnums were the business.
That was really cool at the time when nobody else was using neodymium magnets. Yeah.
You know what else was really good? Hold on. Tokyo Marui Purple Top EG-1000s.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you that have been around long enough to know what that is, OG motor right there.
That used to be the thing. Like back when I first got into like a lot of the forums and stuff, I would be looking up just like, oh, what's a dope motor? Like, what if you could find one? And Tokyo Marui EG-1000 is pretty cool.
I mean, it is cool.
Yeah.
But now completely outdated.
Yeah. It's like every Chinese motor literally outperforms that motor.
I remember for a good minute, one of the popular ones was the G&P M120s.
Yeah, those are. That was the first motor I ever upgraded to my gun.
Absolutely.
The G&P M120.
Me too. And then it went from the 120 to what was it, 160 or 180? It was their
They had a 140.
their devil motor.
No, they had a 140.
I never used the 140.
They had a 140, but then it jumped up to their 160, which is their first motor I think with neomagnets, and then the 170 had neomagnets, and then the 180, and then they have the 175 in between. Both of those have Both of those are really good motors. They're just really pricey.
Yeah.
Those are really nice. Those fully CNC'd. N-Bell and all this other junk on it. Those are cool, but it's expensive.
And now, these days, at the risk of sounding like I'm plugging a brand that we're fond of, Matrix motors are really good motors.
Matrix motors have been really good for a while. People, I think, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, people, I think because of how they're priced, people think that they're cheap motors, but those things are really good. Like I've had really, really good experiences for the price with those. The neodymium magnets, whoever they have at that factory sourcing their neodymium magnets, so strong. Like some of the strongest magnets like on the market as far as neodymium goes. And they offer such a variety of different TPAs now. You have either your high speed, which is the blue one, the traditional like turbo, I think, the Magnum, which is the red one. And then now we offer the Sonic, which is the super high speed one. And their Godzilla, which is their
yellow and green. Is Sonic yellow or is Sonic blue?
Sonic's not yellow.
No, but I mean, like they couldn't use blue because blue is turbo.
It still is blue.
Because Sonic is blue. Yeah. What color is Godzilla? Is it green?
It's red.
That's dumb.
Well, it's got Godzilla on the sticker, so yeah.
It's a dumb color.
But those are good. The Godzilla is super high torque if you're looking for. I think that one's a 28 TPA motor. If you guys are familiar with turns per armature and windings and stuff like that, very very torquey. And then the Sonic is on the opposite end of the spectrum at like 12 TPA, so stupid high speed.
But not very torquey.
No, but it's got enough that it'll pull just about any basic weight spring. The basic turbo is 14 TPA, and then the Matrix Magnum is 16 TPA, I believe.
So do you have some favorite brands as well?
Besides the Matrix motors, because I was using those a lot. I used to use SHS motors, and I liked those for a while, but the QC on the SHS stuff got a little bit spotty, so I strayed away from those. ASG, though, has their ultimate CNC series of motors.
The Infinity.
And the Infinity stuff, and those are great because they offer even more variety of TPAs and sizes and stuff. They offer speeds all the way down to 1800 RPM, all the way up to 40,000 RPM. So
when we upgrade my brand, we're using one.
We're using I think I'm going to use a 2200 series motor from them. But yeah, but what's great about the ASG motors is that they have, I believe Bob was saying they're like on their fourth generation of pinion gear. So the pinion gears are a lot more refined now, but it's a steel pinion gear that's nicely CNC machined. It's got a fully CNC machined body with a metal end bell on it. Metal end bell? I think it's got a metal end bell. Yeah, I think it's got a metal end bell on it. So really high quality motor for only $55. And for something like that, comparatively, I think Sistema made some that are like that, but those are in the $100 range. Same thing with G&P, those are in the $100 range too. So for your money, ASG motors are my go-to, I think, for most motor applications and stuff now.
All right.
Yeah.
And real quick, if somebody's wondering when to choose a torque over a speed motor.
Okay. So it depends. Well, okay. So then my philosophy has sort of changed from when I first started building. Because for a while I was like going with speed motors and high-speed setups to try and get the maximum amount of speed out of my guns.
Well, because speed isn't really the name of the game anymore.
Not even that, though, but because speed motors are generally... So here's the curve that it'll generally go with. So the higher speed motor that you have, the faster it'll be, but you're lacking in torque, and they'll suck a lot of power because they're not very efficient motors. And the other range, if you go super high torque, your 0 to 60 time, or how quickly it spins up will be very fast. It'll be very efficient, but they're very slow. Like the Matrix Godzilla, like... I think on 13-to-1 gears with the 11.1 LiPo, I was only getting like 15 to 18 rounds per second. Like it's really slow on full auto. It's like it sounds like a stock gun, but it's very efficient, so you don't suck very many batteries, and it's very snappy, which is usually the name of the game now. So I would generally recommend going for either a balanced motor or a torque motor. So what does that mean? So the TPAs, the turns per armature, for a balanced motor are going to range somewhere in the 16 to 16-ish TPA. So the Matrix Magnum would be a good example of that. They call it a high torque motor, but it's realistically more of a balanced motor. So I'd recommend something like that or anything higher than that. So your 20 TPA motors like your JG Blues, your ASG, 2200 series, 30,000 series, stuff like that in that range are sort of your more torquey but balanced motors, and then anything else higher than that would be if you're only concerned about semi-auto trigger response and saving battery life.
So if you're doing a DMR build, definitely go with torque.
Or if you know that you're for sure never going to use full auto, then yeah, definitely go all as torquey as you can get. Go with the Matrix Godzilla or the ASG 1800 or 18,000. Sorry, I keep on saying 1800, 2200, but they're like 18,000 series motor. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's your turn.
Thank you for such an in-depth response. That was going
no
well.
problem. I don't do very much tech stuff anymore.
Go ahead and replay that whole section.
Yeah.
If you're trying to learn all about motors, we will wait.
Motors.
Just kidding, we're not waiting for you. Hendrik Lewick asks, hey, Insert, what is your opinion on painting airsoft guns? Have any of you done it before?
Have you painted any airsoft guns?
I think the only one of my guns I ever painted was my VSR 10. And
No, you painted the scope on your M27.
Oh, yeah.
Painted the scope on the
Okay, two things.
But it wasn't a whole gun, though. So.
I painted my VSR 10. I painted it with Plasti-Dip so I can get a rubberized finish.
That'll rub off.
That rubbed off immediately. And
Ricky did the same thing with his UBR. He was just like peeling it off.
It was terrible. It was
field.
a terrible idea. And yeah, I painted the short dot and the suppressor on my M27 to try and match them to the color scheme of the gun.
Yeah, I've never painted a gun just because I was always concerned about, like, I guess how well the paint job would turn out and resale value on it, which is stupid because I never sold any of my guns really. But that's my biggest, I guess, like, warning to people that want to paint their guns is make sure that you're doing it right, because you could seriously mess up the performance of the gun based on, like, what things you don't do and don't mask off correctly, or how well you disassemble it and prep everything. And if you just paint it, you're most likely not going to be able to sell it, like, ever. So get used to just owning that gun for the rest of, whatever, unless you want to sell it for a really cheap price, because most people are not interested in your paint job. Yeah.
There you go. That was good. I think painted guns look cool.
Miguel's got some really cool painted guns. I like the paint scheme that's, like, worn. That's cool. Like a Mark 18 with, like, a worn paint scheme, dope. I wouldn't pay someone's worn gun, but if it was mine, it looks pretty dope. Yeah. So, Yitcon says, "Hey, Insert Matt, what tactical hair product do you use to awesomify your hair?" Yeah.
I get asked this every day on my live Instagram.
Yeah. So what is it, sir?
American Crew.
I use American Crew too when I actually put stuff in my hair.
It's a good product.
Yeah.
I forgot which one it is. It's the
Fiber.
Oh, Fiber is good.
I use Fiber.
There's another one.
What is it?
It's clay. It's
clay.
One of the clay ones. It's like a tan-colored jar label.
What is it like?
Yeah.
Is it a bottle? What is it? It's
like a little tub. Yeah,
It's like a little tub. It's like a tub.
All right. Caden Bemis asks, "Hey, Insert. I've just recently gotten into airsoft. I play every other weekend with a couple of friends in high school. I'm planning on upgrading my SR25K. And I was curious on what upgrades you guys think would be most beneficial for me. Really love the show, and I hope to see more."
That's a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.
So I actually just upgraded our friend James' SR25 recently. With pretty minimal parts, because I didn't really want to spend that much time on the inside. But I'd say the first thing that you probably want to upgrade, because it actually, if it's an A&K SR25K, it will, or if you got it recently, it probably comes with a neodymium Chinese motor, which are very good. They're very torquey, so you really don't need to change that.
Checks that off the list.
Yeah, if you want to, you can change it, but you really don't. Like, just take it from me, you really don't need to change it. Your trigger response will be great. I would suggest replacing your inner barrel with an aftermarket inner barrel, either Mad Bull, or if you can afford it, a Prometheus stainless steel inner barrel. Other than that, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to upgrade for more power, if you just want more accuracy, it sort of depends on where you're at right now. And I wouldn't really know that without, I guess, a live response from you.
You could also look into some battery saving options as well. If you absolutely wanted to upgrade something, you felt like you needed to spend money on something, there are certainly inline wired MOSFETs that are available to you. Changing the wiring can also be beneficial, but
the wiring would be a good thing. It's just the wiring's a little bit more complicated. I don't know how, or if you're going to take this to someone to get stuff installed, but if you did, MOSFET would be great. But it depends on if you're going to do the work yourself and if you're comfortable doing that work, or if you're going to take it to somebody else and you're comfortable with them doing that work and how much you wanted to spend. So it sort of depends in that sense. But most of the components in the A&K SR25s are pretty solid. Chinese components have gone a long way. If you're going to break into the gearbox, I'd say maybe check all your air seal parts. Yeah.
A good air seal is key.
Yes, it is. That's where you should be losing.
I mean, dude, an air leak is the difference between 20 or 30 FPS sometimes,
or more,
or more. You
or
know,
more.
It's, you know. So if you ever need to drop FPS,
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Cut a hole in your bucket.
Introduce an air leak. We don't drill holes in our hot valve units.
Nah, that's. X Viral Killer asks, "Hey, insert. What is the most craziest funny thing you've ever seen during an airsoft game?" I got a couple. There's some pretty funny ones.
Okay. I'm waiting for you, man.
Oh, okay.
Start us off.
There's that one where we went to Lion Claws where that dude was flying that drone.
Yeah.
And then you remember we're on the Humvee, and then we remember we parked at an intersection, and then this DJI Phantom drone comes flying out of the side, and we're just like, oh hey, it's a drone, and it was windy that day. Or was it at Copperhead? No, I think it was at Lion Claws. And so this drone comes flying out. The guy's using it for recon or something. This is why I don't think that drones should necessarily be used in airsoft games. Because it flies out, and then just sort of hovers here, and then this giant gust of wind just... Because we're in the desert, high desert, and so this giant gust of wind goes... Boom! And then just takes it, and then flings it across the thing, and then we wait for 2 seconds, we're like, is there a guy that's going to go get that? Because now it's fluttering on the ground or whatever. And then just... being pitiful, and then this guy runs out, and he's on the opposite team, so we're all just like, oh, we feel bad about this, but pop, 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 and we tag him, and then he's just sort of raises his hands and sits down, and it's all dejected and sad, and we're just sorry. I thought that was pretty funny. But
I think one of the funniest things I've ever seen is we were at Jets Field, and randomly, out of nowhere, we're all at an event, randomly, out of nowhere, comes one of his teammates at the time, a guy named JP, dressed as a Jedi, wielding 2 lightsabers in the middle of an airsoft game. Literally everybody kind of put their guns down what the hell? And he's running around melee killing everybody.
Nice. Did he win?
No.
Oh, okay. Well.
I shot him in the ass.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Last one or second to last one?
I'll do the last one.
Okay. All right, second to last question is, Ikim the Insane. Hey, insert.
Hey.
You guys are doing a wonderful job. Keep it up. Now for the question.
Thank you.
Is there any certification kind of thing for being an official airsoft tech? Funny you should
ask that.
Ikim the Insane. We have an answer.
Yeah, we're working on it right now. I don't know what the status of it is right now because it's still in development, but we will have some sort of certification program that if you're at least in SoCal and you can visit us in our store or whatever, our tech department will be doing, I guess, certain levels of certification that you can take to certify your
level of knowledge and experience
working
with
on
teching airsoft guns.
So I believe right now they're working on the basic one, which involves would give you an M4 basically, and you have to disassemble it completely and then reassemble it. Disassemble it completely. Every pin and every screw has to be removed from the gun, and then you have to reassemble it within a certain time period. I believe it's an hour, and it's doable. I tested it out, and it's doable within an hour, if not just a tad over an hour, but it's doable, and you just have to reassemble it correctly to show that it
has to function.
Yeah, it has to function for I think it's 8 magazines worth of BBs, which is not that bad. I know that our the thing that they do when we hire new technicians here is we actually have sabotaged guns.
Oh yeah, they'll torture test.
They'll take, or not torture test. But
torturing the new employee.
Oh yeah. That part.
Not torturing the gun.
Yeah. So they'll actually take a gun, purposely mess something up in it. I know that our technician has removed parts that are not super obvious that he's removed. He's taken something and drilled a hole in it just randomly, and you have to check everything and see what the potential issue is, and you have to solve it in a certain amount of time. So that's a bit more intense. I don't know if they're ever going to get to that point yet, but then I know that the basic assembly, reassembly sort of certifications are coming soon. We're still working on that though. But no, there is no, as of right now, there's no official certification and stuff. I would say if you wanted to show off your work and stuff, the best example would be to build stuff and put it on YouTube, and try and show...
There's also tons of forums for guys.
There's tons of forums too. I don't frequent any of them anymore. I just don't have the time for it. But Airsoft Mechanics, and I started off on Airsoft Forum actually. I know that there's Airsoft Retreat. No, Airsoft.
No.
I don't know if Airsoft Retreat is still a big thing or not. What's that other one? Airsoft.
There's one called Mechbox.
Is it still around? Oh,
No.
It's still no, it's not still around.
It's
The
been
videos
so
are still up
yeah.
there. Airsoft Mechanics is the more technical one if you want to get in the real nitty gritty. I don't know how many active users are still
The
on that.
nitty gritty.
Still on that one, but that whole thing is a treasure trove of information if you want to search around. There's so many threads going back like 5-8 years talking about like different kinds of like, you know,
The
tech
odds
stuff.
are, if you're thinking about doing something
Someone's
interesting
done
or
it.
creative, someone's
done it, and they've
And,
realized why it's a bad idea.
right, and they've messed it up for you
Yeah,
already. So.
exactly.
All right, Ryan, hit us up with the last question.
Last one. Desk pop.
Don't mess this up.
Does Drake Airsoft
Drake.
asks, does Evike do customization, and how much does it cost, and can you ship it to North Carolina?
Yes.
Yes.
It depends on what you want.
Yeah. So, oh man, I get to pull up my in-store sales pitch spiel again.
Oh, here it goes.
It's $35 an hour plus parts. We won't upgrade anything past, I believe, 25 RPS and over an M130 spring, and because of reliability and liability issues. Double check on that though. I don't quote me exact because it's been a while since I've said this. But at last I remember, I think it was 25 RPS is the max that will do rate of fire wise, and an M130 is the highest power spring that will install into your gun. But yes, we will ship to North Carolina. You can go to our RMA page, I believe it's our RMA section, and ask about that there, or you can call into our customer service line and they can give you a little bit more in-depth explanation of how to send your gun in for an upgrade. So we can you can ship your gun here, we'll work on it, and we'll ship it back out to you. But yeah, we do ship to North Carolina.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yeah. Woo, we're done.
Nice job. All right, guys, we have no sponsor for this episode, so we thought we'd give away some cool stuff that we had around the office. A set of 10 of our Evike Gangnam Style hex patches. 10 winners could win. Make sure you check out our Facebook on Friday. That's 2 days from now. We'll post a picture of them. I'll give you guys something creative to say, and maybe you guys can win one of our really cool hex patches and stuff. That does it for this episode. See you next time.
Bye-bye.